Reckless Stormseeker is an incredibly powerful magic card, yet for some reason it doesn't see as much play as its power level would make you believe. In standard seasons of the past, this card would have been a potentially ban-worthy staple that heavily fueled red-based aggro decks, but the mid-range dominant meta of recent years has left Stormseeker without an iconic deck of its own. I think it's time to fix that. I wanted to build a deck that put Reckless Stormseeker's hasty combat trigger to use, and after some brewing, I decided to create a one-shot stompy deck around Ancient Imperiosaur. When March of the Machines first released, players were quick to notice that the fully convoked Imperiosaur would have exactly 20 power, and if we could use our werewolf buddy to give him some running shoes, we could potentially get a kill as early as turn 3. Here's our game plan. We start off in the early turns by building a wide board of creatures to convoke out the Imperiosaur. Our fastest route to Creature Town is through Gleeful Demolition, which trades an artifact for 3 1/1 goblin tokens. To support this plan, we have 2 1-drops that produce artifact tokens when they ETB. We have Gilded Goose and Voldaren Epicure. Ornithopter also pulls double duty as an early blocker and another artifact that can triple its body count. In case we don't draw the Demolition, we also have slower backup token producers in the form of Row's Reinforcements and Hordeling Outburst. Finally, once we have a critical mass of creature tokens, we can convoke out either an Ancient Imperiosaur or a Shivan Branch Burner. Then give them haste with the Stormseeker trigger and smash in for a bunch of damage. But what if our opponent runs removal, I hear you say? Well, fear not, we have 3 copies of Kazul's Fury to fling the damage at their face directly. Oh, and Invasion of Urgamon is also here too. It loots, it makes treasure, so I figured I'd give it a try. You can check out my full deck list in the description down below for a longer breakdown, but for now, let's get on to some games. We start game 1 on the draw with as close to a perfect opening hand as we can ask for. We have artifacts, we have Demolition, we have the Dino, what more could we possibly want? Our opponent starts with Lair of the Hydra into an Elvish Mystic. Oh god, please don't be mono green Devotion. We fire back with a Copperline Gorge into a Gilded Goose, which makes a food upon ETB. Our opponent drops a Takenuma into an Elvish War Master, signaling that we're up against Golgari Elves. They drop another Elvish Mystic, triggering War Master to create an Elf Warrior token. Our opponent's deck is pretty fast, but we might just be able to race if we play our cards right. On turn 2, I shock in a Stomping Ground and ramp into the Reckless Stormseeker. Our opponent drops a Tyvar, Jubilant Brawler, which untaps an Elvish Mystic so they can play Elvish Visionary to make a token and draw a card. On our turn, we drop an Epicure, dealing 1 damage to their face and creating a blood token. Then I follow up with a Gilded Goose to make another food token. This allows my non-summoning Sick Goose to tap for red mana, which I use to demolish the blood token and create 3 1/1 goblins. Our opponent -2's Tyvar, getting back a Citadel Stalwart to trigger War Master. They follow up with a Jaspera Sentinel and pass the turn. Now we're at a point where our 2 armies are staring each other down, but little does our opponent know that we're about to drop a scaly bomb on them. On turn 4, I tap all 7 of my creatures to cast Ancient Imperiosaur for free, which will ETB with a whopping 14 +1/+1 counters. They respond with a March of Burgeoning Life, targeting their War Master, which will tutor out another War Master and create 2 more Elf tokens. At the beginning of combat, my Stormseeker triggers, giving the Imperiosaur +1/+0 in haste, and we swing in for 21 trampling damage. Our opponent decides to live life on the edge and blocks with only 2 elves, dropping them down to exactly 1 life. Oh no, did I make a huge mistake? Did I just fumble the perfect hand? Nah, not at all, because I can just play Voldaren Epicure post-combat, dealing that last point of damage to our opponent and stealing away a win. That match was pretty close, huh? Well, we have plenty more matches where that came from, so if you enjoy what you're seeing and you want to see more of it, please be sure to tap that like button and subscribe to keep up with all future uploads. It's completely free and you can unsubscribe at any time. Now let's get on to game number 2. We're on the play this time, and our first hand is far too slow with 0 payoff. Our second hand isn't much better, but I decide to risk it and bottom an Outburst. We start with a shocked-in Stomping Ground into a Voldaren Epicure, pinging them for 1 damage and creating a blood token. Our opponent starts with Lair of the Hydra into Elvish Mystic. Oh lord, not again. I play the Boseiju and attack, getting in for 1 damage. Epicure's Twin comes out next, followed by a food-bearing Gilded Goose. Our opponent runs out a Copperline Gorge and stomps out our bird, which hints that we're against some sort of Gruul mid-range deck. We play out a Mountain for turn, then attack with the Vampires for 2 damage. On our second main phase, I cast Hordeling Outburst, creating 3 Goblin tokens. Our opponent follows up with a Pathway into Thunderbreak region. This deck really gives me Dragons of Tarkir standard vibes, I wonder if we're against Dragon Tribal. We run out Invasion of Urgamon, foolishly trading away a Gleeful Demolition for a basic land. To fix my blunder, I crack a blood token, and sure enough, we get another land. Oh boy, this is gonna be rough. We full swing, and our opponent chumps an Epicure, dropping them down to 11 life. Our opponent clears out some of our board with a Shatter Skull Smashing, then gets in with the whole team for 5 damage. We top deck a Reckless Stormseeker, and instead of going for the head Thanos style, I full swing at the Invasion to flip it into a Truga Cliff Charger. In retrospect, I'm not entirely sure that was the right play. Honestly, let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think that was a mistake? Our opponent plays the Bone Crusher Giant, then destroys a token with the Invasion of Tarkir. Maybe this is a dragon deck after all. I crack my blood token to cycle away a land, drawing into another Epicure. With the Stormseeker's trigger, I pump the Cliff Charger and swing in for 4 damage, forcing a mutual trade in combat. They accept our trade offer by blocking with a Bone Crusher, and we trample over them for 1 damage. Our opponent fires back with a Stormseeker of their own so they can pump the region and attack the invasion of Tarkir to flip and give them another flying beater. We top deck yet another land, so I crack yet another blood token only to find a Hordeling Outburst. If we can hold on a little longer, I think we've got this game in the— oh wait, I'm actually just dead on board. Their Stormseeker can pump one of their dragons, and Defiant Thundermaw's ability will trigger for each dragon that attacks. So we get taken out by a pair of flying dragons for Xaxes. It was a close game, but I guess dragons are more powerful than dinosaurs. We're on the draw for game 3 with a really bad hand. Our deck is sort of a one-trick pony, so we have a pretty big issue when it comes to bad opening hands and constantly mulliganing. Hand number 2 has a much better curve, so we decide to bottom the spare dino and keep our 6. Our opponent starts with a snow-covered island. Ah, crap, I know what that means. Yep, there's the Ascendant Spirit. Mono Blue Spirits is not a fun deck to play against, and we have no way of interacting with any of their creatures. Let's just hope their counterspells get stuck somewhere in their library. We open up on Forest into Gilded Goose, and they fire back with another land and attack for 1. We take the damage, and then they play another Spirit post-combat. We cast the Gleeful Demolition before their counterspells come online, then drop another Gilded Goose. Unfortunately, I have a massive fumble by using the food token to pay for the second Gleeful Demolition that was supposed to target that same food token.
No. Wait.
I blame Arena for that one. They play a Spectral Sailor on my end step and then play a land into Supreme Phantom to anthem their board. They swing in, hit us for 2 damage, and pass the turn. We may not have our hasty combo, but I still decide to convoke out a 16/16 Imperiosaur anyways. Their counterspell package usually consists of Spell Pierce, which doesn't hit creatures, and Lofty Denial, which is 2 mana, so I feel safe to threaten their board. My meta knowledge pays off because that chonker resolves and our opponent just glances down at our board in confusion. They hit us for 3 flying damage, which drops us down to 14 life. On our turn, we attack in for 16 trampling damage, dropping their life total from 20 all the way down to 4. I'm pretty sure our opponent knows it's over because they grow their Ascendant Spirits and then full swing at us. We have some geese to help block in the air, and we don't even get the satisfaction of another Dino Rampage because they scoop the game up. Okay, so now you've seen this deck in action a few times. Let's take a quicker look at some other games that I play with decks so we can see just how well it stacks up against the Explorer meta. As fun as this deck is to pilot, it doesn't exactly have a great record. Even with a very fast setup, sometimes we're just not fast enough, like in game 4 against Blue-Black Mill. We ramped out a Reckless Stormseeker on turn 2 thanks to Gilded Goose, and since our opponent valued their Ruined Crabs so much, we got to swing in for 3 damage early. They milled us for 6 with Fabled Passage, causing a double landfall trigger, but this left them vulnerable to our creatures. They let day become night, which flipped our Stormseeker into a Stormcharge Slasher, and we were now dealing 5 power worth of damage every single turn. Their inability to cast 2 spells per turn put them in a pretty precarious situation when we got the Shiv and Branch Burner out, and 6 power with Flying and Trample is no joke. Our opponent was dead on board with so much setup, but unfortunately their Jace the Perfected Mind made quick work of our library, forcing us to scoop the game. On the play against Rakdos midrange, the deck struggled to perform as well. We somehow managed to dodge the hand disruption spells and got our board nice and set, just waiting to draw a payoff and end the game for good. Our first draw was a Gilded Goose, which doesn't really do anything. Our next draw was a Kazul's Fury, great in response to a kill spell, but pretty useless on a board full of 1/1s. Maybe we'll grab the Dino this time.
Nope.
Maybe this time?
Nope.
This time?
Nope.
With only 6 Convoke payoffs and a ton of dead cards against Rakdos, we had to scoop this game up as well. At least we ended the day on a high note, mostly because our opponent didn't really do anything. A single Luminous Broodmoth on turn 4 doesn't compare to 4 turns worth of our setup, and with no outs, our opponent scooped it up after taking 15 damage to the face. So that was the deck that I've optimistically named Gleeful Dino. Overall, our record today was 3-3, but in my time playing the deck off camera, my overall win rate was probably more around 25%. While the nut draw can theoretically win as early as turn 3, most of our hands without Gleeful Demolition and or Imperiosaur were far from playable. I was also really unimpressed by Invasion of Urgamon. I think it's got a home somewhere, but this just was not the deck for it. Ideally, we'll get some payoffs for our creature token army in some upcoming sets. A future BFZ Remastered set would give us access to Reckless Bushwhacker, giving our wide board of tokens an aggressive anthem effect to use as a backup win con. Ah well, a man can dream, right? Thank you for sticking around to the end of the video. Please be sure to leave a like and subscribe on your way out. You can also find me on social media at JayoticMTG, including on the new Threads app by Instagram. Until next time, take care.